Good morning, everybody. I'm going to try something. There is a video, and this video is going to be from the children's television program Bluey. And you guys are all medical students. You're less likely than people at my age to have small children. But bear with me. We'll see if this resonates. Let me just give you a quick introduction. These are the main characters in Bluey. Unfortunately, Mom will not make an appearance in this one. Bluey is this little gal on the left. She's about equivalent to a 6-year-old child. She's a blue healer. This is an Australian television program. This is her little sister Bingo, who's about 4, and that's their dad. And so I have embedded it in the talk, and let's see if the sound quality, if Diana and Dolores could give me a thumbs up if the sound quality is adequate. They saw the other alternative way of playing it. So here we go. Hey. Whoops, JK, we do not need to watch it again. That button should do. Okay. So I don't know. This for me was, I watched this with such rapt attention the first time. Not all of the episodes are this good. Because so much of what I saw resonated with what it actually feels like sort of to be a scientist at this point, and maybe has sort of felt like this intermittently throughout my whole life. And it started off with this, like, why can't I just do it straight away? We are all highly selected for people who have had perhaps an easy time doing certain things that were harder to other people. And the more that you advance in your careers, the more you're going to find situations where, no, you can't do it straight away. And that might be different. Like, this might be a relatively new feeling. People in this track are signing up for something that is intrinsically very hard. And failure, I think, is a part of every physician's life, whether you end up in clinical anesthesiology or in any other facet of medicine. There will be failures ahead. And so learning how to comfortably manage those is really important. Bluey's dad sort of first advises Bluey to look around. And because Bluey took a step back from her own, at the time, failure being able to ride the bike, she saw that there were 3 other pups that were struggling. And rather than focusing inward on her own misery and unsuccess, she was able to see that this is actually an experience that's very common in her age group at this playground at the moment. And that she's actually in it together with some other pups. So what do you see when you look around? Well, Bentley looked up and saw these long, lanky dogs just like doing the monkey bars like it was no thing. So sometimes you look around and all you see is other people being successful. Whereas Bluey, when she backed out, was able to see a little bit more of what was going on at the playground. It wasn't just Bentley having a hard time. It was a bunch of pups. So distance can be helpful when you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you're failing. Everybody melted down in the middle. And I wanted to highlight that there's a difference between how some of the pups melted down compared to others. So Bentley on the ground, like, and then also Muffin with the backpack, freaked out, screamed. It was obvious to everybody that they were having a tough time on the playground. Like, they drew attention when they were failing. And that can be good because you can pull in help as well. People see you struggling and pull in help. But Bingo's instinct was to hide under the water fountain, to get quiet and small and sad. And I put this on the slide because I think that mentors in your life might need to know about your own failure style. I think a lot of us internalize failures and don't express them. And therefore, it can be hard for somebody to know how much you're struggling until it pushes you into the very edge. And we don't need that. Like, in struggle, you don't need to be at the very edge. Often you can ask for help earlier than that, and it doesn't feel so bad. There are commonalities to how everybody processes failure and rejection. And Bluey noticed that her pup buddies were doing the same stuff that she was when she was struggling on the bike. But there are important differences as well. And the differences in how we respond to failure are often learned, and they can be learned in a direction that's unhelpful, and they can be learned in a direction that helps actually support future success, and practiced just like any other skill. So the pups did get back up, by golly. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way that they had perhaps this cheering section. Bluey and her dad were cheering on the other pups like the whole time, not even when they were being successful. I know I have, I can think back on who my cheering section is throughout my whole career, and identifying the people with whom you feel comfortable sharing your struggles so that they can support you and cheer you on has been really important to me. This would be a group that takes joy in others' hard work, not just successes, but also the hard work that it takes to get there, like celebrating the submission of a grant rather than when it's funded, and has empathy with your failures. They've seen it before, they understand where you're coming from. And then kind of, we're all used to perfection often, that we've been able to turn out perfect results in a lot of areas in our lives. And I wanted to point out that there are increasing opportunities that I observe for compromise, for something that's a little bit less than perfection, but is done or is in or is published or whatever. And maybe it's not exactly perfect, but identifying opportunities to compromise helps you move things that could be always worked on and ultimately never put out there into the world towards the success column. At the end of the show, Bluey gets back on the bike. And what do you think? Was she an amazing cyclist the second she sat on the bike? Right? Absolutely not. I'm sure she continued to fall, but the falls were the same, like the actual physical outcome of riding bikes was the same. But she processed it differently, and she was willing to see those failures as steps towards succeeding ultimately, rather than just sort of a blanket, I can't do it. I did want to mention this postscript that once you are successful, you've got to figure out what you're going to do with that success. Sometimes it's hard. And please be aware that success will beget further failure, because when you succeed, you typically have another thing that maybe you've never done or you've never done well that you have to then navigate. And actually, this is an awesome part of being in medicine and in science. It's expected that you live at this boundary between what you're comfortable with and what you potentially could do. And intrinsically, pushing your own skills and learning new skills is full of failure. Without that failure, you don't learn how subsequently to navigate failures and ultimately succeed. I did want to point out that Bluey is a lovely, it's a nice story, but not everybody comes from a family where a parental figure is like modeling successful handling of failure all the time, that the family background and the other stuff that you've learned along the way can really help or make it more difficult for you to tune your brain in these directions. Not everyone is doing something that they know can be done. Like I don't always submit a grant knowing that it's a great idea. It might actually be an idea that maybe shouldn't be funded. And so like getting super stressed out about the minutia of success and pinning it on one or two things is probably not a good idea, because sometimes you're doing things that actually cannot be done. There are patients I take care of who I could not save, but also possibly nobody could have saved. And then Bluey 6, we're older, we come with baggage, we've got something to prove, there are forces outside our control. And I did want to explicitly highlight that forces outside our control, like systemic racism, like sexism, which remains pretty common in medicine, and the kind of sequelae of them, like imposter syndrome and being pinned with the first to be so-and-so, or you don't look like a microaggressions. All of these things that come out will make it harder to navigate these steps compared to like just brushing off the mulch when you fell off the monkey bars. So with that, managing failure is hard. That's why we're talking about it, but you have all proven that you can do hard things. And so keep practicing and working towards this as any other skill. I'll turn it over to Dolores.